show is AD on the radio. What?
Today on the show, we remember September 11th, and we discuss how to take the meaning of the day back as we turn it into a day of charity, positivity, and contribution. We talk about Irma and radio's role in disasters, plus Steve Bannon says he's a street fighter.
Hadouken!
Not that kind of street fighter.
Welcome to the future, where the glass is half full and you'll need new glasses, where you'll be jumping from conclusions.
The past is annulled, and a new future is born.
Never before in history has so much meant so little to so many. AD on the radio.
So it was this morning. It was this morning 16 years ago. I was living in New York City. Not a boy anymore. But I know I didn't yet feel like a man. But the moment that I woke up, looked out my window, and saw plumes of smoke where the twin towers of the World Trade Center had stood when I had fallen asleep just a couple hours ago. That very moment, like the rest of the people in New York City, like the rest of the people in America, in the world. At that moment, much, if not all of my innocence absolutely ceased to exist. During that time, during what followed, over the next days, hours, we lived in darkness and we lived in fear. As friends, family, loved ones, unable to use subways, cars, and buses, anxiously made their way home on foot over bridges that we worried were the next target. As the scope of the death and the loss and the devastation became clear, as it became clear that survivor wasn't a word that we could use in this situation for the most part. As all of these things became clear, grief rolled over us. It crashed over us in waves. I'll never forget, you felt as though just as you were about to be able to breathe, just as you were about to be able to break through to the surface, your head above the water that was a city's despair. Just when you thought you were about to be able to breathe, that's when you were knocked under the never-ending rising tide of shock and grief as another chilling, devastating statistic of death and loss was reported. It left us all screaming for vengeance and retribution and justice. But the retribution and the justice that we sought would not come for years. The lives of those that we lost would go unavenged far too long. The foe responsible for it all would not be vanquished by the man who led us. For years, we carried that cross of anger and grief with us as a city. We bonded together. We did for one another. But if you're like me, if you were in that part of the world at the time, so often you felt anger, you felt grief, and you felt the pain of the question, where is the justice? Now, 16 years later, I am still angry. And when I think about what today meant, when I think about the loss, when I think about the unimaginable scope of the death, of the innocent lives lost, I'm still angry. I'm still grief-stricken when I think about what today meant. But I'm also ready to stop allowing terror or our enemies to have a win. And I've decided I won't allow them to define how I spend my day on 9/11. I'm determined to be one of those who changes how the day is remembered. And I know I'm not alone. Now, years later, September 11th is the nation's largest annual day of charity. It's a beautiful thing. Tens of millions of Americans take time out each September 11th to do for others in some way. And we must never forget the attacks of September 11th. We must always honor those that were lost, those that gave all in the service of others. We must never allow those who would commit acts of terror to go unpunished. But this year, I'm choosing to honor the memories and the sacrifices and the lives of those that we lost by taking actions of love, not those of fear or hate. And if you are ready, I ask you to join me in doing the same. Maybe volunteer, maybe support a charity. There are and will continue to be so many in need in the wake of Hurricanes Harvey and Irma. Or maybe you can just perform a simple good deed in tribute to those that we lost and those who rose up in the service of others in the aftermath of September 11th. In the names of those who are lost, so that their lives may have meaning for years and years to come, I am ready to take back the meaning of September 11th and make it ours, not theirs. And I hope you'll join me.
Radio
104.1.
Where the left and right come together for fundamental truths. AD on the radio, on Twitter at ADSXE.
Every day you're going and working, running that rat race, and that pace and that place will leave a bad taste for anyone, everyone working day after day.
The attacks of September 11th were intended to break our spirit. Instead, we have emerged stronger and more unified. We are more determined than ever to live our lives in freedom. My mayor in New York City during September 11th, 2001, Mayor Rudy Giuliani.
Officer John Perry of the 40th Precinct in the Bronx went to police headquarters the morning of September 11th to file his retirement papers. When he heard the explosion at the World Trade Center, he raced to the site. John Perry never returned. I don't think anyone would have blamed him if he had decided to stay behind that day, but he was a New York City policeman. He knew what he had to do, and he did it one last time.
I've often dreamed of a far-off place where our heroes' welcome would be waiting for me.
Walking back to the firehouse,
Where the crowds would cheer.
people were cheering us, but we sure didn't feel like heroes.
Right then and there, I knew
In a voice
this was going to be the worst day of my life as a firefighter.
This is where I'm meant to be. I'll be there someday. I can go the distance. I will find my way. If I can be strong, I know every mile will be worth my while.
Go to the trade center.
When I go the distance, I'll be right where I belong.
We're going to try and do something. That was the message sent by some very American heroes with names like Sandra Bradshaw, Jeremy Glick, Mark Bingham, Todd Beamer, and Thomas Bennett. They found themselves aboard the hijacked Flight 93 that went down in Somerset County, Pennsylvania on September 11th, 2001. They witnessed the brutality on board and somehow summoned the strength to warn us and take action. United they stood and likely saved our world from an even darker day of perhaps even more unthinkable horror.
I will search the world, and I will face its haunts. I don't care how far, 'cause I can go the distance till I find my hero's welcome waiting in your
I know it's early in the operation here, but I just wanted to thank everyone for all that hard work that they've been doing. How we're here only only God knows. But again, guys, thank you so much. You have no idea.
I will search the world. I will face its walls.
My father was lost in the September 11th accidents. He was a firefighter, and I love him.
Till I find my heroes will come waiting.
Your father is a hero and a patriot.
Always love, never surrender, never forget. Oh, by the way, to our crew at Real Radio 104.1 in Orlando, Florida, that was our first affiliate when we started getting other radio stations to carry us. To those folks who are, wow, I got a couple of emails from people saying, like, I can't believe that you guys are working today. I can't believe that you guys came in to broadcast. And it's funny because, well, that was one of my first lessons in radio. I'll never forget, like, one of my best friends in New York City, and to be perfectly honest, the guy who is responsible for me being on the radio at all is this guy who you don't hear on the radio anymore. He does a bunch of sort of like programming and management stuff now. But this dude called Will Pendarvis, who was the afternoon guy at K-Rock in New York City at the time, a rock radio station that doesn't exist anymore. But he was, I believe, the first person back on the air after 9/11. And I was like, that's amazing. That's crazy. And he was like, yeah, my family wasn't too cool with it. The whole idea of me going into work when nobody knew what was going on. I cannot stress to you the level of fear that was involved in the idea of stepping outside your front door. Certainly traveling for any kind of distance in the city, certainly traveling over the bridges or through the tunnels or on buses or any kind of public transportation. Everything felt like a potential target. Yet it was his job to go into the radio station and be on the radio. He was the first person, I think, on that station, maybe the first person in New York City to get back on the air. I know a lot of the news stations were there too, but he was there. The moment he could be there, he was there. And I remember not being on the radio at the time, but saying, that's intense, dude. What the hell, man? And he was like, well, in these situations, radio is and always has been and always will be the government's first line of getting information to the people of America. In a crisis, that is what we do. So my hats are off to our friends at Real Radio 104.1 in Orlando for doing what they do. And that is what we do. We take our hats off to them.
For more stimulation and less irritation, 9 out of 10 doctors choose KPRC AM 950. Houston's more stimulating talk radio.
Don't get the blues, get all the news. We mean all of you guys out there in Radio Land. All aboard!
He's back. AD on the radio.
Give it up, yeah. Give it up, yeah. Bring this on, come on, come on.
So Hurricane Irma could be the strongest hurricane this country has ever seen. Irma spent 3 days. This is just some interesting stuff to put it in perspective, what folks are dealing with at the moment. If you're not in a part of the country where this is real, well, let's make it a little more real, shall we? Irma spent 3 days as a Category 5 hurricane. No other hurricane has ever sustained that much power for that long. It's down to a Category 1 now, but it had winds over 185 miles per hour for 37 hours, which is also a record amount of time. I think when we last checked in on it, it was still going at around 85 miles an hour. It's almost 400 miles wide. Yeah, Irma, almost 400 miles wide. I believe that based on the measurements, Irma was larger than the state of Florida at one point. So far, almost 6.5 million people have been ordered to evacuate in Florida. And when it's all said and done, this could be the largest evacuation in United States history. Around 26 million people could be affected by Irma, with total damages of over $120 billion. It's the first time in history that the continental United States of America has had 2 hurricanes that are Category 4 or above make landfall in the same year. It's really something. We'll discuss a little bit more about what's going on with that later on. Right now, though, Funkhauser, let's do a little news, shall we?
Okay.
Yeah, it was interesting when we were on the air in Houston doing what we're doing during the last hurricane, during Harvey. It was funny because, look, like I said, what you do in these situations is you are the government's first resource when it comes to getting information to people. That's what radio is. That's what it always has been, and that's what it will continue to be. So radio will always be on the front lines of these situations. Like, people are emailing us saying, can't believe the folks at Real Radio 1041 came into work today. Well, I got news for you. They probably haven't been home in a while. They've probably been hunkered down for quite a bit, and they probably camped out in the broadcasting situation, because that is your duty as an American broadcaster, is to serve the people in your town, in your city, in your community with information and, God willing, keep people safe through that distribution of information. Now, radio is a two-way street. It's an entirely different thing than it was during 9/11. Now, radio is, well, you get instant feedback. And on days where people are giving you grief about not playing enough Metallica or the right Metallica, you kind of wish it was like the good old days when we talk and that was the end of it. But no, people can blast you for playing For Whom the Bell Tolls one too many times instantly over like 25 different forms of social media and let you know exactly how they feel. Which is a treat, let me tell you. But in these situations, it's incredible. It adds a whole other layer to how radio is able to serve the community. I mean, we saw it during Harvey in Houston, where we basically said, hey, if you need help, tweet us, use the hashtag Help Harvey or Harvey SOS if you need rescue, and we're going to do our very best to connect you with the right resource or connect you with someone who's going to rescue you. And we saw, and this is not a unique thing. It happened with me, happened with our midday personality in Houston at 94.5 The Buzz. We saw lives being saved, rescues being performed in real time because of Twitter and that instant feedback that we get from listeners. So people are amazed that the folks at Real Radio 1041 in Orlando came into work today, but this is what radio does. This is how we serve our community. This is what we are meant to do in these situations. And it's a really, look, as the first person to go in after a disaster, or as someone that camps out and stays behind when other people are evacuated, that part is a little bit of nerve-wracking, but this is what we do. We want to serve, and we want to be a part of the communities that we're in. So there you go. It's interesting times, to be sure. I guess it's sort of like that we're the campfire that a city or a nation kind of hunkers down around during these situations, is how I heard it described. That's my buddy Will, that went on the air right after 9/11, said, hey, we're the campfire. People gather around a campfire in times of trouble for warmth and heat and light. And that's essentially what radio has become over the years. We're what a community sits down around. And as interesting and difficult and as hairy as those situations can be sometimes, it's like I said, it's why we do what we do. Ultimately, by being on the radio, we want to be a part of our community. We want to give back to our community, and we want to add some value to it whenever we can. And so for folks like the folks at Real Radio 1041 in Orlando, this is their moment to do exactly that. So there you are.
We were here before social media. Thanks for noticing.
Yeah. Oh, man. All right. What else?
Kirk Cameron went on Facebook Live. You remember that guy? Kirk Cameron?
Yeah.
Family Ties? What was he in? I can't remember.
I don't know. He had a friend called Boner. It wasn't funny.
He went on Facebook Live and said that God sent us hurricanes for punishment and to teach us humility.
Yeah. Kirk Cameron says that hurricanes Irma and Harvey are God's way of teaching us to be humble. He posted the video on Facebook saying, quote, "How should we look at two giant hurricanes coming back to back like this? Do we write them off as coincidences? Do we write them off as a statistical anomaly? Wow, who would have thought? Is it just Mother Nature in a bad mood?" And he added the quote, "This is a spectacular display of God's immense power. When he puts his power on display, it's never without reason. There's a purpose. And we may not always understand what the purpose is, but we know it's not random, and we know that weather is sent to cause us to respond to God in humility, awe, and repentance." Maybe share that with your kids when they ask why this is happening. That's it's funny because I didn't watch the video. I've just read those couple of quotes, but I see the video here in front of me. I'm not going to give it a click and listen, but I'm 99.9% sure he's doing this in an airport. So it's clear that he is in no way, shape, or form affected by what's going on. Either he's getting the hell out of Dodge. I don't know where Kirk Cameron lives. I don't know exactly what he does with his life these days. But I know he wasn't creative or interesting or good enough as an actor or an entertainer to do anything other than be a sort of third wheel holy roller type. But he's, clearly not affected, and he looks just a little too pleased with himself for my liking. He's smiling, he's kind of smug as he's delivering this message of, hey, these hurricanes are a reminder from God. Think about that. Maybe share this with your kids when they ask why this is happening. This is a display of God's power, and God is doing that for a reason. And he's just...
we all start to get a little loopy when waiting for our flight,
he's
right?
He's just too smiley and self-satisfied, and it's just like, it's so freaking... To me, it is so wildly unchristian. Like, it's the smarmy look on his face as he delivers this message of, hey... pay attention to what God's telling you as you worry about losing your life and your home. That just rubs me the wrong freaking way. Like, look, jerk, people are in very real situations here. And now is not the time for an entertainment industry schmuck to come in with a Jesus-related I told you so. Oh, well. At least he didn't blame it on the gays or on people taking down Confederate statues. And yes, I've literally seen people do both of those things. So there you go. Ugh, what a tool. All right.
I blame all my flight delays on God. The Miss America competition was last night. Oops, I missed that.
Can't watch it. I get too frustrated. I mean, all those great ideas on achieving world peace and solving global hunger, and nobody in the government listens. Can't deal with it anymore.
Gwyneth Paltrow poses nude and covered in mud on the cover of her new magazine.
So be sure to pick up a copy of Oh Sweet God No monthly. Actually, I mean, underneath the mud, she looks good. Which is unsurprising. I don't think Gwyneth Paltrow wouldn't put herself on the cover of a magazine naked and have her look bad. She's not like that Lena Dunham. Hey, check out the most unflattering pose for a naked person to be in. Now zoom in on that part. Cool. Let's publish that. Let's put that in a movie. She's not going for that. Here I am in all my naked glory thing. In the same way, reality is not really connected to this form of nudity, so of course it looks like she's in reasonably good shape underneath all the mud. Way to go. Maybe that's why she insists ladies steam their nether regions. Did you see that? There was
Oh, I remember.
Yeah. She said something about steam being like...
Did some research on that.
Yeah. Steaming your lady bits was good for you. And maybe if you do spend a lot of time wallowing in the mud like swine, maybe it is a good idea to really sort of...
Isn't mud an exfoliant?
I mean, people do those mud masks things. Like, we've all had a girlfriend that has been like, I'm doing a mud mask. You should try it with me. And then you put the stuff on your face and play along with it. And have you ever been partied in one of those things?
Yeah, all the time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, every guy has had a girlfriend that made them do a mud mask. And I know it's supposed to be an exfoliant and everything, but also, like, whenever that's happened, I'm like, this mud smells like mint, or this mud smells like, well, it's certainly not mud. Like, I remember I played in the mud when I was a kid. This is not what it is like. So I don't know if actual mud really does, anyways. Go on.
Certain editions of the new Greg Allman album contain artwork made with his own blood.
In totally unrelated news, there's been a huge increase in Greg Allman fans being treated for Hep C.
Aw.
I think Metallica did that too. That was the urban legend anyway. It was like, it was a mixture of...
Oh, can you say this?
Hammett's, yeah, I think so, yeah. It was a mixture of
luck.
Kirk Hammett's blood and other manly bodily fluids that was part of the album artwork for the record Load. That was the urban legend. So there you go. You're willing to bleed for your art, I suppose.
Do you believe the urban legend?
I
mean, you've talked to almost all of them, so...
it's one of those things where at the time, when you heard it, it was all you wanted to know. And I'm sure if you go on the internet, there's some sort of, Snopes probably has record of it. But by the time we talked to Kirk Hammett years later, a couple months ago or a week or so ago, it wasn't that big of an issue anymore. I kind of forgot about it. Reminded me of the controversy. It was kind of interesting. Right around that same time, too, and you forget how political this sort of stuff is, and it seems ridiculous. I mean, some of the guys in Metallica no longer have hair, so it's a bit of a moot point. But I think Lars Ulrich was saying, like, right around the time that Load and Reload came out, they all cut their hair. They all decided independently to get haircuts. And it was viewed as like, hey, these guys aren't long hairs anymore. They sold out. They're trying to be all fashionista because they all got haircuts. It's like they got a 5-for-1 deal at their local barber shop, cashed in on it, and it was viewed as this big political statement. Like, Metallica are no longer a metal band because they cut their hair. Do you remember that? Do you remember any of that being a thing?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And do you remember when we talked to Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine and Prophets of Rage a little while ago? This was interesting because this video came up of Tom Morello of Rage Against the Machine playing their first public show at Cal State Northridge. And what's amazing about it
that's on
is
YouTube, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's on the blog up at the website as well, along with the interview with Tom Morello, so you can see what it is we're talking about, because we spent a good bit of time talking about this one show. Because what's so incredible about it is that Rage Against the Machine were a band that knew who they were and what they were about from the get-go. Like, you listen to that concert, and it all sounds exactly like their first album. But Tom Morello says, like, as people were trying to make sense of what was going on that stage, you're like, none of these guys have long hair. What's this all about?
Sun. You walk these streets most every day. You're waiting to get washed away. Radio 104.1.
This always makes me laugh.
More AD on the radio.
What was that? What makes you laugh?
It always makes me laugh. I just got a Facebook friend request from someone called Ralph O'Leary. But Ralph O'Leary is not what you would assume is a Ralph. Like, it's a super smoking hot chick.
Oh, yeah. I've been getting those, too, lately.
Yeah, with, like, only one picture.
April Summers wants to be your friend.
Yeah, exactly.
April Summers is new to Facebook.
Right, yeah. April Summers has been on Facebook. Although I think what they got wise, and poor old Ralph O'Leary got his Facebook hijacked, and he can no longer log in, and they've taken all the pictures of him down. and it's all just a hot chick, but they've neglected to change the name on the Facebook profile. So I guess that's what they do to make themselves look a little bit more legit. They hack existing Facebook profiles, replace the pictures with like 2 pictures of a hot girl. It's never like a convincing set of them. They never steal an actual hot girl stuff. And the part that makes me laugh is not that I'm getting spam Facebook stuff. It's that I see the 3 or 4 of my dude Facebook friends that we share mutually and see which ones fell for it and are just really kind of like looking for any kind of female attention.
Guy needs a phone call.
Yeah. All right, Funkhauser, what else is going on in the world?
A celebrity version of Big Brother is coming this winter.
Well, that's good because now we know how Todd Bridges' Vanilla Ice and Mini-Me will be kicking off 2018. Do you remember what was it? What was that one show on VH1 called where they stuck them all in a house? Like B-list celebrities, they put them all in a house, and
there was
were a couple
early
seasons.
days. I remember that.
What was it? What was it called? The Surreal Life? Was it The Surreal Life?
That sounds
right. Was it that thing?
Yeah. That could have been the first thing, yeah. Mm-hmm.
You remember, that was a moment where you start to go, ha ha ha, oh, not sure I want to laugh at this anymore, because like Vern Troyer, the Mini-Me guy, was like in a drunken haze, publicly urinating on things, and I think Chyna, the wrestler, was on it, and you went from being like, ha 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 ha, oh, something's definitely not okay there, and then, she's dead a little while later, and so celebrity Big Brother, make of that what you will. And like I said, at least we're gonna know how Todd Bridges, Vanilla Ice, and Mini-Me are gonna be kicking off their 2018. What else?
Game of Thrones star Kit Harington says he doesn't like the term man bun.
I was thinking about this the other day, and I saw someone with a man bun at the grocery store. And I was like, they call it a man bun. But it instantly makes me think, and maybe this is short-sighted, maybe this is Cro-Magnon and knuckle-dragging on my part, but it instantly makes me think that guy is less manly. Like, he's less manly and more bunly than anything else. Does that make sense? I'm not sure if bunly really applies.
He has more open-toed shoes than closed-toed shoes in his closet.
Yeah. Although you do get some, like, I don't know, I have seen some bodybuilder types like that, have decided to go with a man bun thing that look like they could kill you with their thumb just by looking at you. And well, that was a real litmus test, because the man bun makes them even those massive hulking enormo dudes, when they decide to rock the man bun, I still feel as though they're less manly. We should call it something else. D-bag do? Jerk knot?
Jerk knot.
Yeah. I like the jerk knot. There you go.
Oh, the visual. Hey, nice jerk knot you got there.
Yeah.
How long that take you to grow?
Yeah.
The Jacksonville Jaguars beat Houston.
Right, because they hate America. What the hell, man?
Boo.
Oh, man. I got to tell you, seeing my New York Mets go to Houston and play the Houston Astros basically the week of Harvey. Like, large chunks of the town were still underwater. Like, I love my hierarchy of baseball allegiances go like this. I mean, you spend a decade living in a town like Houston, you're going to become a fan of their baseball team, especially when their baseball team shares so much in common with the Mets, i.e. sort of like an expansion team, started in the same year, never quite got there, sort of like the Charlie Browns of professional sports. And but my hierarchy of baseball allegiances go New York Mets, Houston Astros, any team playing against the Washington Nationals. That's who I'm rooting for. But it was really good to see my Mets go to my city of Houston and just do all the right things and be so cool to the people of Houston. They helped first responders. They visited people. They were at churches handing out supplies. They were all over the town of Houston being helpful and giving back and trying to lift people up in any way, shape, or form that they could. The mayor was super grateful for the Mets for doing everything that they'd done. There were Mets fans there with signs of unity and love and hope, and it was a beautiful, beautiful thing to see a bunch of my favorite stuff coming together. And well, as much as it was really nice to see my Mets be nice to my city of Houston and to have them extend just every human courtesy that one would extend in these situations, they didn't have to get swept while they were in Houston. Like, the acts of love and charity were really nice, but getting their asses
they're
handed to
tired.
them.
Let's take advantage of that.
They were very charitable when it came to allowing the Astros to literally walk all over them. They got their asses handed to them. But I mean, the Astros are legitimately one of the very best teams in baseball right now, and the Mets are a ragtag bunch of leftovers and put-togethers and call-ups from the minors trying to figure out what's happening in 2018, so that's understandable. Oh, you know, it was really cool. I saw on Twitter the other day, the Houston Astros thanked the Mets, and this is, a week or so later, but they thanked the Mets. They're like, hey, we'd like to thank the New York Mets for buying the staff at Minute Maid Park all Torchy's tacos today. Like, I guess the Mets just saw what the staff at the baseball park were going through in terms of, some of these people are coming into work, but they don't necessarily have a lot. Some people lost everything in Houston. Many lost everything. And so what they did was they bought the entire ballpark staff delicious Torchy's tacos. I was like, are you telling me that my three big loves, the Mets, the Astros, and delicious tacos, have all come together? That was a feel-good moment. It was great. Day equals made.
Leave the stimulation to the professionals.
Everyone is so smart.
KPRC, more stimulating talk radio.
There's something happening here, and you should know what it is. The dumbing up of America. Now, more AD on the radio.
All right, Funkhauser, let's do a little bit more news.
Well, on his interview on 60 Minutes, Steve Bannon says he's a street fighter. He really said that?
His face. Yeah.
Wow.
So whether you love him or not, you might be a Steve Bannon detractor. You might find him to be scary. You might find him to be... Look, there's Trump fans that are anti-Steve Bannon because Steve Bannon got canned. There are people that are against Trump and everything that he stands for that think that Steve Bannon is the root of all the evil. But Steve Bannon is a guy that you want to pay attention to. If you're looking for some sense, if you're looking for a grain of insight into what the hell is going on in the White House, you have to filter it through your own grain of salt filter. But Steve Bannon is a guy that you might want to listen to. He's a very smart dude, and whether or not you like what he stands for, he had intimate access to the thoughts and the allegiances of President Trump, and I think continues to do so. Like, he still refers to him as himself as Trump's guy and his wingman. We've got some very interesting pieces of audio from that, which we'll play a little later on if we get a chance to. What else is going on?
The wife of an ethics lawyer for the Trump Organization was arrested in Virginia last week after allegedly having sex with an inmate in a car.
Sometimes the jokes just write themselves. Right. Ethics lawyer. There you go. Well, hey. Hold on. We must see pictures of this ethics lawyer. Or this ethics lawyer's wife. Yeah. That's just a whole other level of yeah. She was getting it on in a parking lot with an inmate in Virginia. How is that even possible? How do you get an inmate into your car in the parking lot of that? Anyways,
gotta have special clearance, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it sounds like he was cleared.
Personality.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Like, you look at the picture, you look at the mugshot, you can see the shame. That's a deep sense of shame in her eyes. That picture really does tell 1,000 words. I'll put it up on the blog so you can see for yourself. That's freaking bananas. Like I said, sometimes the jokes just write themselves. Unbelievable amounts of irony on this Monday morning. What else?
Hillary Clinton's new book, Hill Dog's new book about losing last year's election, is out tomorrow.
Yeah, and if you're waiting for Bernie Sanders' book about the election, it's going to be a while. It's not easy using berry ink on papyrus.
What's the new book title? Is it If I Did It? Or is it something else?
I don't know. Hold on. We got some more. Do some more news.
Okay. Hillary Clinton is set to begin a nationwide book tour.
Yeah, sadly, that nation isn't Canada. The idea that there's a book tour, like, here we are in September of 2017. And in that time, Hillary Clinton has managed to write a book and is on a massive promotional tour with it. And that's the thing that irks me the most, I think, about our election process. Like, you just feel after a certain point that a lot of people are showing up because they're on the book tour. And you just know, like, I don't think Hillary expected to lose, but she certainly did know exactly what she was going to do if she lost. Look, Donald Trump, if he lost, was going to set up Trump TV. It was going to make him the most significant media personality on the face of the planet, which, well, he turned the role of President of the United States of America and leader of the free world into the most significant media personality on the face of the planet. That's his gig now. He's a Twitter and internet superstar. Hillary Clinton went a little old school with it and decided to write a book instead. So Hillary Clinton wrote a book. But, like, I don't know. I've talked to authors. Books aren't things that you crank out, publish, and go on a promotional tour for in this amount of time. You got to figure that the book was already in the works during the election. And it's just that aspect. And you felt it, like all these people that were falling by the wayside, all these people that clearly didn't have a shot anymore, that had no mathematical path to victory, I think was the expression was used, would still show up, still weigh in, and you just felt like they were on a book tour. They were on a book tour. They were still happily accepting campaign finance funds from hardworking Americans. They were lobbying with special interest groups. It's just, and that's a part of it that just skeeves me the hell out so much. Like, I mean, I'm sure people are going to be interested in what Hillary Clinton has to say about her run at being president, but the fact that there's a book available for sale right after, so quickly, just me the hell out. I mean, it just makes me feel like the American public has been taken. And look, politics, obviously, politics are a dirty thing. But it's like rubbing it in our faces, like, oh man, this is what this was really about. Just so you're clear, this wasn't about a desire to serve the public. This wasn't about, no, this was about getting my book out. And that's what I think. And look, if you're a Hillary fan, I get it. And this is more indicative of the entirety of the system. It's not limited to Hillary Clinton giving me the screaming heebie-jeebies over this sort of stuff. It's the fact that just all these folks, from the toppermost to the bottommost levels of politics, all of these folks are just basically looking to up their speaking prices at various conventions. It was like that disgusting moment where Newt Gingrich's speaking agency sent out an email saying, because of Newt Gingrich's personal up-close relationship with Donald Trump, it will now cost you 50% more to book him to speak for 10 minutes at your dinner party. It's gross. It's gross. If you're not interesting enough to write anything that anybody cares about other than a bit of political fluff or some legislation, if you aren't creative enough to write an actual song that people care about, if you're not an artist, if you're not an actor, if you're not talented in any way, shape, or form, you still seek the limelight and the ensuing cash that seems to go with it in these situations. Politics seems to be the move, and it just feels like so the vast majority of people that are elected officials are in it for that aspect of it, as opposed to doing the right thing and, well, being public servants. All right, what else, Funkhauser? Let me just climb down off the old soapy box here.
A town in Mexico set a Guinness record by making a 6,600-pound batch of guacamole.
Wow! And with the prices of avocado in this day and age, that's really saying something. I guess like the avocado crop is not what it was in the past, and the prices of avocados are shooting through the roof, which is a bummer because avocados are delicious and they're good for you and all this sort of stuff. But yeah, town in Mexico made the very expensive move of setting a record by making a how big was it?
6,600 pounds.
Batch of 6,600
That's like 6.5 tons.
And when told the news, hipsters flew down to Mexico with the world's biggest piece of toast.
Speaking of hipsters, Lil Wayne is out of the hospital.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah. He'll play Vegas again, just never at Caesar's Palace.
Oh.
Go on.
Yeah, let that sink in for a second. And during a recent show, Kid Rock disavowed Nazis.
So there you go. Nazis have something in common with soap. Man, Kid Rock. This sort of like Senate run and the whole Colin Kaepernick thing and all the above has made him a target. And look, he went on stage with a Confederate flag. He's been very clear about saying, hey, I kind of went on stage with a Confederate flag in a Dukes of Hazzard-y sort of way, and I no longer do that because I realize the weight and significance that it carries for people in this day and age. Kid Rock, and by the way, I'm not a Kid Rock fan, but I read an article recently. There's a new venue, I think, opening up in Detroit, and he's going to be the guy that plays the first show there. And he's getting all sorts of heat, and the owners of this venue are getting all sorts of heat, being like, you're letting Kid Rock play the first show there? How could you? How could you? This is a guy who has culturally appropriated black music, stolen what black people have created, and used it for his own selfish gain. And I was just like, okay, hold the freaking phone a second there. That's ridiculous. That's utterly ridiculous. Look, Kid Rock has a big mouth, and I don't think Kid Rock is surprised or bothered by any of the heat that he gets by opening up his mouth. He's a professional big mouth. That's what he does. But this idea that it is inappropriate for him to be playing a venue in Detroit because he's appropriated black music. Now, I get it. Detroit is home to other great musicians. But Kid Rock is huge and sells tickets and is... Do you remember when we went to Vegas and met a bunch of other radio folks at that? What was that radio contraband situation? I remember talking to Jade, who programs the rock station in Detroit, Riff, I think it's called. And I was like, so is Kid Rock really like is he Detroit's favorite son? Do people, and they're like, oh man, oh God, you don't understand how much that guy has done for the city and how much the people of Detroit love him. And he gives millions of his own personal dollars out of the back of his pocket to the city of Detroit. He single-handedly saved Detroit's orchestra. It's not just limited to, it's not just limited to Pabst Blue Ribbon and wife beater sales. Like it's so much. It's so much sort of like for the people of Detroit, people that are having a hard time in Detroit, helping Detroit get back on its feet after a really tough run of things. And he's beloved in that town for a reason. And for someone to be going, because he raps, and rap is an art form that was created by African Americans, he's now evil for culturally appropriating a style of music. That's just so ridiculous. You agree with his politics, don't agree with his politics, don't agree with him going after Colin Kaepernick, but you can't get around the fact that this guy really, really cares about Detroit. He loved music, he made music, he was extremely successful off of his music, and that's what got him where he is. It's when people refuse to believe that someone is on their side because they're too eager to get into an argument. That's where we get into trouble, and it's got to stop.